Default was the giant sword hanging over America's head. But because of the good work of President Biden, as well as Democrats in the House and Democrats in the Senate, we are not defaulting. Democrats said from the start, we must take default off the table. For a long time, many Republicans in the House resisted. House Republicans were ready to take default hostage in order to pass a radical, hard-right agenda that never could have passed with the American people. So tonight's outcome is very welcome news for our economy and for American families. I thank my colleagues for the good work tonight. I commend President Biden and his team for producing a sensible compromise under the most difficult of circumstances. So many of the destructive provisions in the Republican bill are gone. Because we persisted and we kept insisting that default is off the table, we will not be defaulting, and we will not be passing the hard right's extreme agenda, virtually no part of it. And that is thanks to the Senate and House Democrats and to President Biden. But don't just listen to me. The proof is in the pudding. House Democrats swept the vote, 34 to 117. A higher percentage and number of Democrats voted for this in the House than Republicans did. And it was just repeated in the Senate. Overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats voted for the bill. A majority of Republicans voted against it. And it's not just how Democrats carried the bill to the finish line, but why. Why'd we get more votes? We got more votes because the bill beat back the worst of the Republican agenda. This exercise was basically, this was an exercise in where the American people were at, and they're much closer to where we are than where they are. Of course, nobody got everything they wanted. There was give on both sides, but this agreement was a very good outcome because it accomplished three extremely important goals. First and foremost, we prevented a catastrophic default that would have decimated our economy, raised costs, and inflicted immense unnecessary pain on tens and tens of millions of American families. Second, the bill preserves the lion's share of the historic investments we've made to grow our economy, fix our infrastructure, make the U.S. more competitive on the world stage, which the Republican caucus in the House seemed intent on tearing down. They didn't get to do that. And third, and very importantly, we did a very good job of taking the worst parts of the Republican plan that would have hurt so many families, and we took those worst parts off the table. Let me say it again. Tonight's vote is a good outcome because Democrats did a very good job taking the worst parts of the Republican plan off the table, and that's why Dems voted overwhelmingly for this bill, while Republicans, certainly in the Senate, did not. Remember what House Republicans originally wanted when they showed us their plan, and compare it to the bill we're now sending to the President's desk. The difference is as stark as night and day. Republicans wanted to gut investments we made in the IRA and the Inflation Reduction Act that are driving a new generation of American manufacturing, billions and billions of investments, and thousands upon thousands of jobs. We fought and fought. That ain't happening. The hard-right MAGA Republicans wanted to cut critical investments by as much as 30%, call all these vital programs by 30%, as we say in Brooklyn, NFW. That ain't happening. Republicans wanted to put default back on the table in a few months. That ain't happening. Republicans wanted to roll back Medicaid expansion. That ain't happening. Republicans even played down default and wanted to risk going over that horrible cliff. And today, we Democrats are proud to declare that ain't happening. So tonight, I'm proud to say, thanks to Democrats, all these things ain't happening. And now we've passed this bill. All along, I've said the most important thing is that all parties involved must take default off the table. No default. End of story. Full stop. It was clear to me then that if Republicans would continue their refusal to raise the debt ceiling in a straightforward way, then they needed to show the American people their plan. But we knew there were two choices when we said show us your plan. Either they couldn't, which would have meant we could have just passed a plain, clean debt ceiling, but we also knew that if they did, it would be such a partisan wish list that once it was exposed to light, it could never pass, and it could never really gain the kind of support that was needed. I called the plan the day it came out DOA, Default on America, because that's what it was, and it was DOA in the other way. It was dead on arrival. Republicans who supported the DOA ran away in droves from the harsh cuts they had just voted for. It was a disaster for them, a disaster for the American people. Now we know that nightmare piece of legislation was a blessing in disguise. The Republican Default on America Act landed with a thud across the country. And that failed bill laid bare the partisan extremism which seems to dominate so much of the Republican Party that it would never be the way out of the crisis. So as I said from day one, this demanded a bipartisan solution. We knew we'd need to come together for a solution like the one that passed tonight. And so I'm happy to stand here passing this critical legislation to support our families, preserve vital programs, and most importantly, avoid catastrophic default. I look forward to the President, who again I salute for his steadfastness and his work on this, signing it without delay. Questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Now that you have passed this bill, is there anything you would have done differently in this process, and do you regret not being at the negotiating table?
Well, look, first I talk to the President just about every day. I talk to the group working on it 5 or 6 times a day. So we had tremendous input there. And second, the proof of the pudding is there. This bill was a total rejection of what the Republicans wanted. And look at the vote. That proves that our strategy was the right strategy. Yes?
Mr. Leader, thank you. As part of this joint statement that you read on the floor with Leader McConnell, are you committing that the Senate will vote this year on a defense supplemental?
Okay. The Republicans came to us. The Republican senators were not happy with the caps that the Republican House members had agreed to. And so they came to us and said, well, what about if we need money for Ukraine? What if we need money for these things? The caps may be too low. We felt that the caps are too low on non-defense discretionary. So McConnell and I put out a joint statement that we would look at finding ways to fund things that were really needed through emergency and other ways, but also through the regular appropriations process, which was always going to go forward. So that's what it basically said. And when they came to me and asked me to do this, I said, yeah, that's a good idea. Yes?
Why was the Mountain Valley Pipeline included? Was it just to get Senator Manchin reelected?
Well, the bottom line is that the Mountain Valley Pipeline was part of the whole deal that I had originally struck with Manchin for the IRA. You take the whole plan, and it does a huge amount of good for the environment. I stick by my word. Yes.
Yeah, Senator Schumer, you did mention that emergency funding could be used above these caps. You basically could ignore these caps for any national priority that you guys come together on, in addition to defense. Are these caps basically, from your perspective, not truly real? Because
well, there's always been the ability, whatever the budget agreements have been, when there's emergencies, whether they be on the foreign policy, military front, or the domestic front, we've always funded them. And we reiterated the fact that that path is available to us today. Yes.
So from the beginning, you and House Democrats, said, show us your budget, don't negotiate on the debt. And then the House Republicans showed you their budget, and then Biden ended up negotiating on the debt. Do you have regrets for saying?
Not at all. No, we do. Look at the vote. Underestimating Kevin McCarthy? Look at the vote in the House and Senate. That says it all. We didn't underestimate him. And second, we knew that they had two choices when they were dithering. One, they couldn't put out a plan, and then we would have passed the bill on its own. Or two, they would have put out a plan. We knew the plan would be so bad that it would give us the upper hand in any negotiation. So it worked out very, very well. And that's the bottom line. Yes.
Leader Schumer, if you were to do a supplemental defense spending bill, would you require in exchange for there to be a supplemental bill on non-defense?
The statement McConnell and I put out talked about needs on both sides, the defense and non-defense side. They didn't say we would do it. They said it is a possibility to do it. That's what we said. And it's certainly on the table. Certainly on the table, yes.
Can you talk about how you might approach the next crisis here, either from what you guys have learned about the Republicans in this Congress and how these negotiations work? Because we might be looking at a shutdown, right?
Well, I hope the MAGA Republicans have learned that this strategy of trying to be hostage-taking and do threats and hurt the American people unless they get their way just doesn't work. And I'd hope they'd learn their lesson. Last one.
It seems like a pretty reasonable compromise that had bipartisan support. At any moment did you doubt Speaker McCarthy's ability to be a reasonable negotiator and put together a reasonable?
Well, when we saw his original proposal, we found that very unreasonable, but we knew it would never stand.
Did it surprise you at all that he was able to free himself?
As I said, what we wanted to do is avoid what happened in 2010 or 2011, when there was no plan and they kept pulling, just quiet whispers behind curtains, and the right wing kept pulling the Republican leader further and further and further to the right. And this is a much better outcome than 2011, much, even though it was the same basic scenario. Thank you, everybody. Nice to see you all, and I hope you have a good, long weekend that you might not have been anticipating.
What was the final thing to get it together? Was cinema helpful?